So yesterday we have discussed some very important verses from the sixth chapter about the process, about some of the basic techniques that are given, and there again we saw some very fundamental aspects, uh, the overall process that is given. So there are multiple processes in the Gita. It's not just at one place. It is not only in the sixth chapter. There are different processes, different methods given. In the sixth chapter, the emphasis is on dhyana yoga, means control of mind through meditation. There are other aspects as well. There are other strategies as well, like the karma yoga aspect. Means how do you elevate yourself by performing your work with the right attitude, with the right mindset. That is the path of karma yoga. Then there is the path of Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga means how do you cultivate knowledge? How do you basically assimilate the right knowledge, right information, so that you can elevate yourself uh, and have a better control on yourself, and you're able to perform better in this world. That is the path of Jnana Yoga. So basically trying to elevate our consciousness, trying to elevate our life with the help of right knowledge. And then there is the path of Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga means applying devotion, connecting with the supreme consciousness or the supreme person. Uh, and now there are many interpretations, many ways of relating with that supreme person. The Advaitic ways it says that it is just the supreme self which is basically operating among all of us, and that is the real self. So when we are talking about coming at the level of the self, one may assume that we are individual selves, our own consciousness, our own self are the individual selves, and then there is a supreme self which is who is most all powerful, is all omniscient, omnipresent, etc. So that is again a very deep topic and it requires a lot of discussion. So without going there for the time being, assuming that uh, there is a supreme self, supreme controller, the creator. So trying to understand nature of that supreme person, that supreme creator, which is source of all life, and then trying to cultivate devotion for that supreme person. So that is the path of Bhakti Yoga. So all these different strategies are given. And right now we have started with the process of Dhyana Yoga, which is basically through meditation, control, mind control, etc. So here we are looking at some techniques that are given for the process of Dhyana Yoga. And we have discussed the motivation first. The last sessions we have discussed the motivation. What is the motivation behind the process of Dhyana Yoga or mind control? And we saw this was there that if the mind is controlled, then it is best of friend. If it is not controlled, it is the worst of enemy. And we saw several examples in the yesterday's session, right? So we saw the example where we have uh, a person who is uh, because of lack of self-control, he is basically eating in an unconscious way just to satisfy his desire of taste or sense of taste, and as a result of that, he's spoiling his health. That is an example where an uncontrolled mind is slowly poisoning the body because of all kinds of unhealthy food coming, just driven by the sense of taste or sense of pleasure acquired by the palate. So just driven by that sense, he is basically slowly poisoning his body, destroying his health gradually. So we can see that an uncontrolled mind becomes an enemy. Gradually, it leads to destruction, self-destruction, and also destruction of others in many cases. We also saw examples where our interaction with others means we may have very unreasonable reactions sometimes, or very unreasonable response to situation because of lack of control, and later we may regret that, oh, we should not have done like that, and that also leads to a lot of problems that create problems in our daily life. So these are some examples where slowly in our daily life some activities are affecting us negatively or having negative impact on us, and that is again basically ultimately hurting us. So it's just because of the lack of self control, mind control, that all these activities are hurting us. And we saw extreme examples also, like we have the cases of suicide. Ultimately, this case of suicide happens also because of lack of this process, lack of understanding, lack of self-control, lack of control of mind. So we are getting driven, we are focusing on certain emotions, and we are getting driven, we are getting sucked in by that emotion in a certain direction. So it's a cascade, the chain effect, the domino effect. So all these things are happening because we lose control over the thoughts and the emotions. We give into the senses. Senses means not only the physical senses, but we have to also always remember senses also mean the subtle senses. Means the thoughts, emotions, ego, feeling, all these things are aspects of our subtle personality. So giving into subtle senses is also a problem. If we are driven by the subtle senses, like driven by ego, then that person is not a very good person. He's always egoistic and he's also trying to suppress other people, try to take advantage from other people, trying to disrespect other people. So all these, likewise, if a person is too much driven by negative emotions, hatred towards somebody, that can also lead to destruction or hate crime. If somebody is too much driven by positive emotions, also that can also be dangerous because ultimately, if somebody is having so much, suppose, positive relation towards a person A, and that person A somehow hurts him, then again that will lead to negative effects. So having being driven by emotions, being completely infatuated by emotions is also definitely a bad thing. So rather than controlling the thoughts, minds, emotions, the subtle faculty, the subtle senses, if one is getting driven by them, it is always a dangerous thing. It is always going to degrade the self. We may be daydreaming about something. We may be thinking unnecessary things, driven by emotions, trying to derive some pleasure from those thoughts. And ultimately, it is getting us more and more attached, more and more dependent on those external factors. So all these things make us more and more dependent, more and more entangled. So we want to be free, right? So if we are able to be completely free from all dependencies and attachment, mental attachment, physical attachment, then of course we are going to perform much better. If we have hundreds of dependencies, if we are basically putting the key of our happiness in others' pocket, okay, means if this person does not respect me, I will be, not so happy. If this person doesn't say good thing about me, I will be sad. If this person insults me, I will be angry. So all these things are because we are not controlling the subtle senses, not controlling the mind, and always going towards external factors, and that leads to destruction of time, destruction of our own peace of mind, uh, degradation of our performance. So ultimately, it is leading to self-destruction. So all are numerous examples. You can keep on giving examples after examples on this particular verse. So very, very important, very, very key verse. That's why again I'm repeating today. The one who has controlled the mind, for him the mind is best of friend, whereas the person who has not controlled the mind, for him it can become the worst of enemy. It can lead him to do all kinds of harmful things for himself and others, and most importantly himself. I mean, that is more surprising. That rather than it is his own tool. It is his own mind. Mind is just like a tool. So rather than helping the master, the tool is damaging or hurting the master because the master has lost control over the tool. So it is just like a robot. So if you are having a robot, we have taken this example earlier, this image you have to remember. So if you look at this robot, so the designer or the engineer behind this robot, if he builds a very powerful robot, which has all kinds of, capabilities, it is built for them defense purpose, security purpose. It has all kinds of weapons also. Maybe it is able to fire a gun. Maybe it is able to raise an alarm. Maybe it is able to defend itself by fighting with the attacker. So it has all kinds of functionality. Now, if the person is having good control on the robot, if the software is in his hand, then he can control. He can get the robot to do what he wants. The robot will be protecting him. He will be his best friend because he is going to protect him against all kinds of dangers, all kinds of intruders, all kinds of harmful things, any attack, any crime. So he will be like his guard. He's going to help him. But if the person loses control on the software, he allows corruption in the software. He allows all kinds of viruses attacking the software and lets it get completely corrupted. Then the robot is going to behave abnormally. He is going to be controlled by that corrupted software, and the hardware is ultimately going to behave according to the software, and therefore it can even kill the owner. It can even destroy the house. It can kill the owner. So we can see that in this example also, ultimately if the operator is losing control on the software, the robot can become a source of danger and risk and threat. It can kill the owner also. Looking at ourselves as a machine and our mind, our subtle faculties as the robot, as the software, we are not able to, if you are not able to control that software, it can lead to destruction. It can lead to destruction of the body. The body itself can be destroyed. The mind itself can lead to so many problems. So that's why it is very important that we are focusing on this verse and understanding the importance of this process. That's why this is just so very key. And then we had also discussed in the very beginning the importance of the first verse over here. Yada hinendriyartheshu na karmastunu sajjate. So this as I had declared as the summary of the karma yoga principle. Okay, when we are acting not for sense gratification, when all our activities are devoid of intentions of self gratification or sense gratification, then we are actually established in yoga. This is also very, very important. Again, I am reiterating this. So if we just remember this verse, then the karma yoga is achieved. If we are able to implement this verse, karma yoga is achieved. Because what it says is very, very deep, very, very fundamental. It says that the moment our activities are generally our activities, whether it is mental activity, thought process, any kinds of thinking process that keeps on going on in our mind, any kinds of physical activity also, all these things are ultimately in a common scenario, ultimately driven by some desire to fulfill certain desire. We have taken many examples of this. So that is going to be more clear if we are able to watch the thought and try to see what is the origin behind that thought. So we will be able to trace back that, okay, there is some desire or the other behind all these different thoughts coming. Either some fear or anticipation is there, and we want to get rid of that. We want to do something so that we can, achieve certain things, achieve respect, achieve revenge, achieve some pleasure, achieve some gratification. So all these things we are thinking because of that. So when the mind basically, when we stop this activity, when we start doing our activity not for gratifying our mind and body, but for a higher cause, just for discharging our duty in the best possible way, just for fulfilling our duty. Because we are in this world and we are taking the resources of this world. We are taking so much food every day. We are, taking other people's services. We are fortunate that we have so many resources. So as a duty that, okay, means in this world I am existing, let me be productive, let me do good work, let me do good service, and whatever field I am, let me contribute to the best of my capability, without always trying to gratify, without always trying to satisfy oneself in many different ways. That is also called the process of yajna. Yajna is also elaborated. The concept of yajna is elaborated deeply in the Gita. The first initial chapters itself, third chapter, fourth chapter, and subsequent later chapters also. This is another very common term which is repeated again and again. Yoga is one thing, and another term that is repeated many times is yajna. Yajna doesn't have a very accurate Sanskrit translation. But again, this verse captures the essence of yajna also. Yajna means the closest English translation that you will see in all the translations of Gita, Vedanta, etc. Yajna is translated as sacrifice. Sacrificing means what? Something is something that we were using for our own interest. We are giving it away. Something was of our own use. We were trying to get benefit out of it, but now we are giving it away without any self-interest. So a selfless action. So we are discarding all selfish thoughts and we are giving away our selfishness and sacrificing that act. That is the process of yajna. Doing your activities as a yajna. That is the concept of karma yoga. So again, it links this very verse again. It also summarizes the concept of doing work as a yajna. The concept of yajna means not trying to do activities for own gratification of mind and body, but doing it as a discharge of duty for a higher purpose, for elevating ourselves and for doing our own elevation, and also helping others, helping this creation, helping the society, helping the organization. So that is the process, means trying to contribute our best, trying to serve to the best of our capability without always hankering for our own benefit. If the benefits come, it is okay. Doesn't come, it is okay. Craving for it. We are craving for is discharging our duty in the best possible way. That is the process of yajna. That is the process of karma yoga, which is iterated again and again in chapter 3 to 4, 5, all these chapters. So, some examples again. Here, for example, I have given two pictures. One is for a balanced diet where you have right kind of fresh ingredients, pure ingredients, vegetables, salads, dal, milk product maybe. It's a balanced diet basically, which is good for health, which is soothing for the health, and which very fulfilling for the body and the mind. On the other side, I have all kinds of junk food, pizza, burger, chips, snacks, all kinds of things, highly processed food, and not even fresh. These things are kept in shelf for a long time, and then we are eating it. So many people may have a lot of liking towards the second category, which is basically junk food. And in that case, what we are doing is we are eating for the purpose of pleasure. We are our main focus is that we should be able to enjoy the taste of the food that we are eating, and that is of course going to be problematic because we are not contemplating on the fact that some food can be healthy, some other food can be very damaging for the health. We are emphasizing on the sense. No sound. So somebody is saying there is no sound. Is that true for everyone?
I can hear it very clearly.
Can you hear me? Anyone? Yeah. So people are saying they can hear. I'm not sure. Somebody said no sound. So Mr. Jayanta Bhattacharya is saying no sound. So everybody else is able to hear. So kindly check your setup. So somebody can try to help him. I'm not sure. Let's go ahead. So I was talking about this particular example. I discussed earlier also, but now I'm just trying to present it more graphically. So if somebody is eating for the purpose of gratifying the sense, in this case the tongue, so then he doesn't care means what is healthy, what is not healthy, what is good for mind, what is good for body. Doesn't care for any of those things. He just cares that okay, means my sense of taste should be gratified, and definitely going to lead to bad effects for the health, for not only bodily health but for mental health also. If we eat things which are not very fresh, things which are not very healthy, they are very spicy or very stale or very oily, they have effect on not only the body but also our mind. So it clearly shows up. So if you eat, for example, very oily and spicy food, the mind will be agitated. It will feel dull. It will feel as if it's carrying a lot of load. It will not feel fresh and agile. So, whereas if you eat a cup of fruit or with something very fresh, it has a very, very different effect. It has a very elevating effect. So it has a very soothing effect for the mind also. So the mind and the status of thoughts, emotions, etc., they also are directly linked with the food we eat. We can very quickly feel it. If a person is rather than just focusing on gratifying the sense of taste, if he has the right knowledge and he basically eats for the purpose of good health, he gives priority to the health, he gives priority to well-being, mental as well as physical, then he will be making the right choices. He will be making the best choices possible, and then he will not basically go for food which is harmful for him. He will give first preference to taste. Of course, he may try to make whatever he is eating palatable and tasty also, but the first priority will be good health. And in that case, definitely he is acting in karma yoga. He's not eating to just gratify the sense of taste, but he's eating for his own well-being, so that his body can last longer, it can be healthy, and he can perform his activities in the best possible way. That is the reason for eating, right? Likewise, his mental status is also stable. He's always full and joyful. He's not affected by all kinds of nonsense food that he is eating. So he's performing his act of eating also as a duty. That okay, we have to keep a healthy body and mind so that I can perform my duties in the best possible way. That is the action performed as yajna. Yajna means sacrifice. So we may have tendencies to gratify the sense of taste. We may like to eat many nonsensical things because the taste is telling us, oh, I had tasted this particular food. This is very tasty. Let us go and enjoy it. But he is sacrificing that. He is, discarding that thought. He is discarding that desire which is generated from previous experiences. So he is focusing on a higher objective, not on your own on his own gratification of sense or taste. So he is focusing on a higher objective, and by disciplining the mind, he is to the right intelligence, to the right knowledge, he is performing the act of eating for a higher purpose. So this is again an example of doing work as karma yoga, doing work as yajna. Likewise, in our professional life, when we are working for gratifying ourselves, means let me be the winner, let me be number one, let me suppress others and control others. I want to be the boss. I want to I want respect and admiration from everyone. So here on the left hand side, you can see there is a person who is wearing the crown, and he is trying to outweigh others. He is trying to basically have higher weight, bigger weight, so that he has the control. He becomes the boss. He becomes superior. He can show that he is number one. So this tendency, this thought process may be there all the time in our mind, subconsciously. We always may achieve this kind of status. Wherever we are, let us try to be number one. Let us try to show others down. Let us try to prove that we are the best. So in that effort, if the work is being performed with that objective, it is again for gratifying our sense of ego, or gratifying our sense of emotions. So we want to be respected, we want to be praised, we want to be number one. Others should all worship me, others should all praise me, they should bow down before me. So again, this is working for gratifying your own ego. You may be doing good business, you may be doing good research, you may be doing good job, whatever. But if at the core this kind of thoughts are coming in the mind, then again the objective of work, the objective of duty that we are performing is really gratifying our sense of ego, which is going to lead to problems. It is going to lead to conflict. It is going to leave bad impression on others. It is going to spoil our terms with others. Nobody is going to be friendly towards us. We are not going to have good connect with others. So ultimately, it will hurt us. Everybody will be, developing negative emotions, negative thoughts towards us, and is ultimately going to hurt us if we are not able to win everybody's respect and command. It will ultimately hurt us, and this kind of people may eventually fall into depression, or they may become too egoistic, too angry, very rude. So definitely this kind of people are not good for any organization. Whereas if we are performing our activities as yoga, then we are really understanding others. We are not only just working for our own ego, our own admiration, our own selfish targets, but we are acting to fulfill the duty in the best possible way. So we have an assignment at hand, and we want to execute it enthusiastically with the best possible way, with highest possible efficiency. And we are trying to drive our team. We are collaborating with others. We are happily working with others, trying to help others. Wherever help is required, we are approaching others. So working in a team and driving the whole team, and working enthusiastically towards the goal, because there the objective is that, okay, there is a target, there is a goal, and it is important for my organization. It is important for whatever activities we are doing. Let us put our best effort. Let us work together. Let us collaborate. Let us put our minds and bodies together and accomplish it. So there, the objective is that, okay, let us just put our best effort and deliver the best. After that, the boss may appreciate me. The boss may like it or may not like it. Those thoughts, may not be. They should not be coming. At least we have to put the best effort. So that kind of work, again, it will win a lot of confidence from people. It will, win confidence from the team. It will win friends for us. It will let us work towards objectives in a more consolidated way with the team. It's not just isolated, single-pointed effort. There will be less conflicts, and we will be able to do the things happily, not having envy and competition with others. So again, in the workplace, this is another example. What attitude we should have. So here again, working for a higher objective, working for fulfilling the goals, trying to deliver the best, trying to put our best effort, rather than focusing on our own ego, our own thought, our own gratification. Another example, we have discussed this earlier also, for students also it is very common, where a student who may have all the facility, who may have all kinds of support, all kinds of finances, all kinds of family support, all resources available, but he's distracted. He's not able to control the mind, and the mind is wandering here and there. So there, he's trying to gratify the mind. The mind is telling him, "Let us go and have a chat on Facebook, or let us go and watch some videos. Let us go and watch some movie. Let us go out and eat something." So mind is sending 100 different proposals, and that student is distracted. He is not able to focus on the study. So there, what is he doing actually? Means he is doing his activities to gratify the demands of the mind. His mind is pulling him towards different things, and he is following the mind. And ultimately, the mind may be focusing on certain senses. So mind ultimately, if he starts focusing on senses, that okay, I had eaten something yesterday, and the mind is remembering that sense of pleasure that was derived from eating that stuff, then he is going to basically, his mind is going to follow that sense, and he is going to go towards that object again. Likewise, through chatting, gossiping on different apps, he is getting some entertainment, some temporary mental pleasure, some amusement, some entertainment. Maybe somebody is cracking joke and he's getting some sensation out of it. He's laughing. He's feeling a bit happy about it. So all those sensations in the mind, they are pulling him towards those objects. So again, he's doing all these things for deriving pleasure, for giving pleasure to his mind, his thoughts, his emotions, his overall thought process. So wanting to watch a comedy show maybe. So there also what is happening. So if it is somebody, there are so many stand-up comedians these days, right? So there are so many stand-up comedians these days. I'm not sure why this hand is raised. No. So in case not audible, so somebody is saying not audible again. So any problem with audio right now? Am I audible?
Yes, there is no problem. Audible.
Okay, so I'm not sure. Some people mentioned sometimes that it is not audible. So here also, this example also, ultimately the person is too addicted to, the student is too addicted to all these distractions all the time. What is the core? The core is that he's trying to do all these distracted activities for gratifying his own mind and senses. So there also it is ultimately going to lead to loss. Whereas another person, like the girl shown on the right hand side, she may be from a poor family, but she doesn't have so many resources, but she's determined that okay, whatever resources I have, I am grateful, and let me put my best effort. Whatever resources I am having, let me use that and put the best effort. And then she's making good use of her time, good use of whatever small space or resources she has, whatever limited finances she has, and she's going to achieve success by putting her best effort. She may not be too worried about the success. She's just concerned about, let me discharge the duties properly, let me study well, let me accomplish all my duties, the responsibilities, and whatever happens, whatever results come, okay, we will accept that. So there we can see that she is doing yajna. Yajna means she is sacrificing all kinds of hundreds of distractions. She is suppressing all those hundreds of distractions. So this is the process of yoga or yajna or sacrifice, sacrificing all nonsense of the mind and focusing the mind. So it is like a tapasya, right? So yesterday we discussed the concept of tapasya also. Tapasya means we have certain natural tendencies, and those tendencies may be leading us to distraction, many different distractions. So with force, we try to control those natural tendencies, and that is basically tapasya. So here also the mind may have natural tendency. If we leave it uncontrolled, it will be like basically a vehicle on self-pilot, aeroplane on self-pilot, and it will go anywhere randomly. So that is a natural, that is the uncontrolled mind. So there we are trying to restrain the mind through tapasya, so through determination. So it requires determination to do that, right? So that's why it is also compared to tapasya of mind, yoga of mind. Yajna means sacrificing all kinds of other distractions and nonsenses that we have in the mind. That is the process of yoga. Likewise, this is another scenario where we may have students who are preparing for certain things, trying for competitive exams or jobs or any kind of uh, opportunities. So now there also we can have two scenarios. In one case, the person is focusing on his own mind, his own thoughts, his own ego and emotions. That okay means what will happen if I fail? What will people think about me? What will family members think about me? What examples I will put before juniors? So he's worried about that. Means he's worried that he will not gain that respect if he is not able to clear it. He's always concerned about that. So there again, he's getting into trap of his senses. In this case, the senses are subtle senses. He may have determination to work. He has the right determination. He has the right attitude. I mean, at least he's putting his effort. He's working hard. But now he is falling prey to some other faculties, some other subtle faculties like ego, emotions. So he's getting scared that okay, if I fail, what will happen? So again, this may lead to a lot of stress. So rather than working joyfully, that person may be under a lot of stress and he may underperform eventually. He may perform less than what he is capable of doing. So again, here, rather than focusing on the duty, rather than focusing on the target, rather than enthusiastically working to the best of his capability, he is in an uncontrolled way. He's focusing on a lot of thoughts. These are just thoughts, right? Somebody may insult me, somebody may praise me, somebody will not respect me, all those things. So again, if we are focusing on those thoughts, the desire is okay, I should gratify my subtle faculties. I should get respect, I should get admiration, I should be boosting my ego, I should go out and tell that okay, I have completed this things, I have cleared this exam, people should respect me, my family members and relatives should respect me, my friend circle should respect me, all those things. So these things are coming in the mind. These are emotions and thoughts and ego coming in the mind. So if a person is focusing again and again in this direction, although he may be hardworking, but the desire is generated by all these subtle senses, subtle faculties, and they are pulling him towards the wrong path. He is basically focusing on these subtle faculties of mind, ego, emotions, etc., and he's going to get under stress. He's going to underperform. Whereas on the other side, you have another person who is just grateful for all the resources, all the good fortune he has, and he's just he's putting the best of his effort to achieve whatever goals are there. So he's not too much worried that will happen, that will happen. So he's not concerned about his own ego, insult, praise, prestige, all that thing. He's concerned about focusing on the right action. That at this particular time, this is the right action to be performed. I will put best of my effort. I will stay away from distraction, and I will put my effort enthusiastically. So in that case, he's warding off all these waves of thoughts which keep coming in the mind, and the general tendency of trying to fret about or worry about all these thoughts, all these subtle senses of ego, emotions, pain and pleasure, etc. So that way, both these people have that right determination of working. Both these people have right attitude of maybe putting the best effort. But one person is getting distracted because of the subtle senses, ego, emotion, thoughts, whereas the person who is self-controlled, he is not driven by all those things. It's okay, if I lose, what is the big problem? There are 100 other opportunities, I can grab them. As long as I have a good life, as long as I am capable, as long as I have a good body and mind, I am very, very fortunate and I can execute many things. I can try out 10 different things. I will get it. So he's not worried about all these things. He's just concerned about putting his best effort. Even if it fails, doesn't matter. It doesn't say that okay, my ego will be hurt and I will not get respect, etc. So these are thought processes which are ego driven, and that may lead to a lot of stress for the individual. So again, not just the determination of doing the work is not enough. Warding off all these subtle faculties, or basically controlling all these subtle faculties and the disturbing thoughts that are generated by these subtle faculties of ego, emotion, etc., that is also equally important to be able to perform well, to be able to perform stress-free way, to be able to perform in a joyful way. And then coming back to some of the verses that we had discussed yesterday. So this is the process that we had discussed yesterday, and initial verses are talking about how we should practice this process of controlling the mind. So this is one process of meditation. And I also mentioned that, of course, 24 hours we cannot be in meditation. We have to do a lot of activities. So this is like a dose of meditation. That okay, daily at least we are putting some time, maybe 20 minutes, half an hour. Maybe if somebody has more time, 1 hour. So if we are putting that much effort daily, then it gives us some strength and some determination. It gives us some capability to basically become observers of mind, controller of mind. So this is just one particular, I would say, strategy, so that by practicing this we can get established in yoga, get established in self-control, become observers of mind, become controllers of mind all throughout the day. So by a single dose of 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour meditation, we are practicing. Just like for staying healthy and fit, maybe people may be going to gym and doing exercise. Some people may be doing yoga and asana. Some people may be jogging. So they're doing some activity, going for walk, morning walk, evening walk, whatever. So by investing some amount of time on physical activity, they are trying to gain good health. So they may not be spending more than half an hour or 1 hour, but they are gaining good health throughout the day. Means they are keeping themselves healthy and fresh. Likewise, this process of meditation, 15-20 minutes, they are strengthening their mental brains, the mental muscles. So they are getting the control over the mind. They are exercising the mind. They are developing that process of control over the mind. So this is just like an exercise. It should not be taken like that. Okay, once we are done with the exercise, now the rest of the day we can leave the mind uncontrolled, and we do not practice self-awareness, do not practice mindfulness. So this is just to strengthen our resolve, just to strengthen our ability of being able to control the mind, become observer of our thoughts, become observer of our minds all the day, throughout the day. And then we were looking at this very important, the second verse, where there is a mention of ekagrata, tataigragram manah kritva. We have to make the mind ekagra, or single pointed. And there we discussed a lot of techniques. We were discussing techniques for making the mind ekagra. Some techniques mentioned over here. Also, next verse, if you see, it is mentioned samam kaya shiro grivam dharayan achalantiram samprekshanasikagram swam. That means focusing on a single point. Maybe focusing on at the tip of your nose, sitting erect and focusing at the tip of your nose, and concentrating all your attention at the tip of the nose. And there are other processes I discussed. Some people fix their attention on the eyebrow, middle of the eyebrow. That is also mentioned in some other chapter, 8th chapter. It is mentioned that there is a process of focusing the mind on the middle of the eyebrow. Likewise, I discussed other processes, pranayam, focusing the mind on the process of breathing in and out, deep breathing, and inhaling, exhaling, and just focusing the mind, focusing the attention completely on the breathing process. That basically gives us an object, a process on which the mind can focus. So if you don't have any object, then it becomes difficult to basically make the mind ekagra. Ekagra means it has to be focused on one thing. So that one thing can be your breath during the pranayam. When you're doing the pranayam, just focusing 100%, trying to eliminate all the distractions and focusing 100% on pranayam, the breathing process, observing how the wind is passing in and out, feeling the sensation. That is the process of meditation. So focusing on your center of the eyebrow, focusing on your tip of the nose, and not looking in other directions for a long time, and complete attention on the tip of the nose. That is also a process of meditation. We also discussed several other things, the mantra chanting or sound meditation. We discussed the concept of, or the process of pranav meditation. You can have simple sound like omkar being pronounced, and the complete focus is on the sound. We are completely listening to that sound, not letting any other thought come into the mind. If it comes, then we bring it back, means we observe. The moment the mind goes away from the object on which we are focusing, we have to forcefully bring it back and again apply it to the sound on which we are focusing. Like there is a process over here. If you look at this, in this particular slide, you can look at some very nice verses given. So here it says that that means slowly. It will not happen once. It will not happen in a single strike. Slowly, gradually, buddhya dhriti grihitaya. By have to grasp the mind. Buddhya dhriti grihitaya. So by determination only we have the intelligence and the mind. Determination, as I have said, is the characteristics of the self. That determination, willpower, comes from the self. It is the characteristics of the Atma. And we have discussed this clearly. Therefore, it is saying, buddhya dhriti grihitaya. So mind is, lower than the intelligence. So we can control it with the right intelligence. But then that decision of being able to control the mind through intelligence, that decision, that determination will come from the self. The self has to decide that yes, using this intelligence, I have to subdue or control the mind. Therefore, buddhya dhriti. Dhriti means determination. Buddhya, by using the intelligence with determination. Dhriti grihitaya, holding it, grasping it with determination. So slowly, gradually, with the use of intelligence, and knowledge, using the determination of the self, let us grasp the mind. That's what it is saying. Shanai shanai, uparamed buddhya dhriti grihitaya. Atma sansthanam manah kritva na kaschid abhichintaye. Atma sansthanam manah kritva. That means focusing the mind on the self or on whatever object we are trying to focus. Maybe a sound, mantra, maybe the tip of the nose or eyebrows, whatever. So on whatever sound, mantra, object, we are focusing the mind. We have to, Atma Sansthanam, we have to bring the mind under self-control or focus again and again on the object of meditation, on the object of focus. Atma Sansthanam manah kritva na kaschit avichintayet. Na kaschit means nothing else. Na kaschit api chintayet. We should not think of anything else. So this will come slowly, gradually. It will not happen in one day. That's why this word is clearly mentioned. Shanai shanai uparmed. It will happen gradually. Practice is required. Right? Then the second verse says, Yato yato nischarati manas chanchalamasthiram tatas tato niyam yaitad atman eva vasham nayet. Yato yato means wherever nischarati wanders, manas chanchalam asthiram, the mind which is chanchal. Chanchal means restless. The nature is it is restless. It will always take us like a loafer. It will keep wandering here and there. So mana chanchalam asthiram. Asthiram means unstable. It's always moving here and there. So see, the mind is being described like that. Nature of the mind is, tendency of the mind is like that. It is chanchalam asthiram. And it keeps wandering. Yato yato nischarati. It will keep wandering here and there. Tatas tato niyam yaitat. Second line says, Tatas tato niyam yaitat atman neva vasham nayet. From wherever it goes, we have to observe it and bring it back. So we should be alert. We should be aware. We should be observing. We are trying to focus on a mantra, on a sound, but we see that, oh, now it started thinking of something, some garbage. So we have to bring it back with force and determination. That's what it is. Tato tato niyam yaitat. Using determination and resolve. Niyam means resolve, determination. Atman neva vasham nayet. Bring it under self-control with force. So this has to be done, practiced regularly. Unless we practice it in one go, it doesn't happen. It has to be practiced again and again and again and again. And then the result of that is mentioned in the next two verses. Prashanta manasam hiyenam yoginam sukhamuttamam upaiti shantarajasam brahma bhutam akalmasham. Prashanta manasam. So this prashant word has come earlier also. Prashant means peaceful, completely peaceful, joyful. Prashanta manasam hiyenam yoginam sukhamuttamam. So once we get to that status of control, self-control, and we are able to control this jungle of thoughts, the turbulence in the mind, then the yogi or the practitioner of meditation achieves that status of sukham uttamam. Sukham uttamam means the highest bliss, highest pleasure, highest happiness. Upaiti shanta rajasam. Upaiti means achieves. Shanta rajasam. Shant means he controls, he basically pacifies or subdues. Shanta rajasam. Rajas is a very important word. Rajas is related to the three gunas, three qualities of nature, or basically three modes of nature. So all of you might have heard of these terms: sattva guna, rajo guna, tamo guna. So there are three qualities in the nature: sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic. We will discuss it in detail. I mean, these are again very, very fundamental principles and applicable everywhere in all our duties, work, way of thinking, way of life. So something can be sattvic food is something everybody might have heard of. This food is sattvic khana, sattvic bhojan. Likewise, there are many aspects. If your thinking process can also be sattvic, tamasic, rajasic. Way of work can also be sattvic, tamasic, rajasic. The so there are many different examples for this. So rajasic means the moment we are focusing on self gratification, that becomes rajasic. Any activity that we perform for gratifying our own self or our own mind, ego, emotion, body, bodily senses, bodily pleasure, it becomes rajasic. So that work is rajasic. So the moment we are able to control the self and elevate our mind through this process, we will be able to surpass that rajasic mode. Then we will not be acting to gratify and run after all these senses and this restless mind all the time. Then that peace that we achieve, through that peace, we are surpassing this rajoguna. We are surpassing the effect of passion. So the three gunas, sattvic, tamasic, and rajasic. These three gunas are translated as follows. Sattvic is called goodness, mode of goodness, sattvic, that is established in goodness, peaceful, joyful, self-controlled, and working efficiently, joyfully. That is sattvic mode. Rajasic, which is described here, rajasam, rajas guna, or a rajasic guna, that is translated as passion, mode of passion. That person is always passionate. Passionate means always agitated, means restless in the mind, always trying to gratify something or the other, gratifying his body or gratifying his mind. So he's always turbulent. He's not peaceful. And if he attains something good, he gets very, very elated. If he achieves something bad or some failure, he gets very, very depressed, very, very negative. So he's not having equanimity. He is driven by the senses. He is driven by emotions. He is driven by the body. So that kind of person is called rajasic person. So if we are able to control the mind through meditation, if we are able to elevate the mind through this process, then that person is able to surpass this rajas or guna of rajas. Then he becomes sattvic, and then he can be established in equanimity. That's why the next word is also important. Brahma bhutam akalmasham. Then he gets established in the Brahma. Now Brahma is again a very, very elaborate topic. I can't afford to describe Brahma in a small time or single lecture. Even talking about this topic, it takes a lot of even whatever small intelligence or understanding we have, we can discuss it, but it will take a lot of time. So I'm not discussing this. So Brahma Bhutam means elevating the consciousness to the level of something superior and sublime. Basically, you can treat it as a self. Means the self, once it is elevated from all these bodily and mental things, then it is established in peace. Then it can approach the Paramatma. Remember that was Paramatma Samahita. So they are also here saying that once you overcome this process of rajas, which is pulling you, dragging you in 10 different directions, making your mind restless. If you overcome all this jungle of thoughts, then you are established in Brahma, Brahma Bhuta. You become established in the Brahma. Akalmasham. That means that is devoid of all agitations, all disturbance, all all kinds of distress. So that is akalmasham. And the last verse says, Yunjan evam sadatmanam yogi vigata kalmashaha sukhena brahma samsparsham atyantam sukhamashnate. So here also it says that if you are able to elevate ourselves from this level of thoughts, emotions, body, etc., and practice this process of meditation, then Yunjan evam sadatmanam. Yunjan means established in yoga. Yunjan means getting attached or getting basically aligned. Yuj means getting aligned or getting attached, getting associated. That is yuj. So Yunjan evam sadatmanam. So sadatmanam means always with the self. Sada atmanam. So once we are attached or associated at the level of self, with the self, not getting degraded to the level of body, mind, etc., but elevating ourselves to the level of Atma or the self, becoming the observer and the controller through this process of meditation, then yogi vigata kalmashaha, that yogi, that meditator becomes devoid of all kinds of kalmasha. Kalmasha means irritation, agitation, source of disturbance, source of distress, all negatives. So vigata kalmashaha, then he is able to detach himself and he becomes free from all this, because ultimately all this distress, all this turbulence is coming from mind. Sometimes it gives us something good and we may get attached to it. The same time, other time it will come and beat us with stick and we may get agitated. Therefore, if we are able to become its master and elevate ourselves, then we become Vigata Kalmashaha. And then the last verse is Sukhena Brahma Samsparsham Atyantam Sukhamashnute. Means once we are established at that level of self, then we get Atyantam. Atyantam means that pleasure, that happiness which is limitless, which never ends. So once we are established at the level of Brahma, that means at the level of self, then we see all these things in the life as game. A video game, a player, means a child who is playing a video game, he knows that, okay, whatever game he's playing over there, means he may lose, he may win, he may get killed in that game, somebody may steal his things, somebody may beat him up, he may fall into a ditch. So there is a game, and sometimes he may be able to get some reward also. He may earn more points. So there are n number of games, right? Students, kids these days, they keep playing all kinds of online games, video games, mobile games. So there are many games. So if the person, if the child is not too attached, he is having good sense that he knows. I mean, ultimately it is just a game. He's always happy. Whatever the game does to him, even if he loses, it's okay. He got some entertainment out of it. Likewise, if you see here, if we are able to detach ourselves from all the games of life that is going on, ups and downs, egos, thoughts, emotions, clashes, somebody saying something, somebody hurting us, somebody is giving good things to us, somebody is giving bad things to us. Sometimes we are winning, sometimes we are losing. So rather than getting entangled into it, and sometimes we are ourselves getting driven by desires of body and mind and senses, so running after it, getting agitated, getting restless. So if we are able to detach ourselves from it and become the gamer, okay, I am the gamer, let me observe what is going on in the game. Let me, whatever happens, I am detached from the game. I am the self. I am the owner of this body mind complex. I am not this body and mind. I am not my emotions. Emotions belong to me. They are my tools. The thoughts belong to me. They are my tools. The mind belongs to me. It is my tool. I am not that mind. So being at that position, then that person becomes the real, peaceful, equanimous, and joyful person. Atyantam sukham ashnute. So that person achieves real joy and happiness. That's what is mentioned over here. So yesterday somebody said that when we are doing meditation, then we all of a sudden we get a lot of tears and we feel some joy. So this is the process mentioned over here, right? So if we, it gives us basically relief from all kinds of ups and downs and distress that we may be facing otherwise. Rather than getting entangled into all those things, we are able to detach ourselves and be established in the self or in the Brahman, in the Paramatma. That is the concept. Then I'd say, let me stop here. Tomorrow we will discuss some very important concepts related to the mention of Brahmacharya. Yesterday I had started discussion on Brahmacharya. It's a very, very important topic, and it has many components. It also leads, it links with the process mentioned yesterday. We discussed several processes that was mentioned for making the mind ekagra, how to make the mind ekagra. And then we discussed that, okay, means meditation and focusing the mind on a single object, sound meditation, breathing meditation, pranayam, mantra meditation, and we took several examples. So there, all these tools were discussed. And then we also looked into the next verse, which says that the last verse basically over here, Prashant Atma Vigatabhihi Brahmachari Vrate Sthitaha. So what is this Brahmachari Vrate Sthitaha? So that also we have to understand. What is this meaning of this term and why it is important for disciplined life, which can help us in the process of yoga, which can help us in establishing ourselves better in the process of yoga. That is also something we are going to discuss tomorrow, and why this is important. All these components of our daily life, how to apply this concept over there, and why it is going to be very, very important. So it not only involves meditation and yoga and dhyan, but also requires some component of self-study, maybe reading some good things, mindfulness, how to speak, what to eat, what not to eat, daily routine. It is basically, it's a way of life. Doing the exercise, pranayam, asana, etc. All these things are part of brahmacharya. So we will look into that and try to understand how we can derive benefit from it. So let us stop today and try to see whether there is any question. Any question? Do we have any question on this topic that we discussed today? Any comments, any discussions that you like to share from your side? Okay, so if we don't have any question, we can end the session. So I hope whatever we discussed was meaningful and I could explain the things. Any other, any discussion, anything that you'd like to share from your side, any experience that you'd like to share, any example that you'd like to share regarding any of the components? Unmute. So Mr. Amar is trying to unmute himself. Let me see. So he is the host. I'm not sure. Mr. Amar is the host. I'm not sure how, but okay. I'm not sure why. So you are unmuted now. So if you have anything to contribute, if you want to share something, please do that. Yes, hello. Anybody would like to say anything? Any discussions? Any questions? Okay, so if we don't have any questions, let us connect tomorrow. And please do provide the feedback regarding today's session. That is very, very important. If you feel that it is becoming, of course, I think yesterday I was not able to record the whole thing. So some things I have repeated today. And that repetition is again because there are some verses, some parts which are very, very important. Therefore, this is the first time I'm taking this kind of session. So sometimes when I see that there is some component which requires correction, or I need to present that in a better way, so I go back and try to correct it and try to improve it. That's why sometimes we have presentations also. So yeah, the slides definitely makes it a little more visual. So I will try to make it more visual now onwards, so that people feel more interested. So if I just the visual effect has some positive impact. So if we just go on showing shlokas, that doesn't give that feeling. If you have good graphics related to the shlokas, then it becomes more perceptive. We are able to think in that direction. So Mr. Bajaj, Abha Bajaj, I think Mrs. Abha Bajaj, not sure. So she's asking, as you said, we should focus or force our mind to be to being back to the state of mindfulness. But sometimes it brings logics and justification. How to justify that? So logic and justification, logic and justification for what? So if you have decided something, you have decided that right now is the time for meditation. Right now is the time for basically practicing mindfulness and stilling my thought, controlling the thought. So in that case, the determination is that, okay, I should drive away everything. There is no logic, there is no, argument over there. So I am the master. I decide that right now I should stop wandering the mind. Mind should not think anything else. It should focus on the mantra. It should focus on the sound. It should focus on the nose tip. It should focus on the middle of the eyebrow. So there I have decided. Or if I'm reading Gita, so I should focus completely on the meanings of the verses. I should not let my mind wander. So that is my. There is no other story, no other logic, no other distraction. During your normal activities, when you're performing your actions, you're thinking about something, there, of course, you have to be careful that, okay, I am using my mind as a tool. I am using it in the right way, applying the mind on the right topic, applying my thoughts on the right topic, and not letting it do whatever it wants, not letting the mind, incorporate wrong thoughts. So that is the watchfulness of thoughts. So if you practice meditation, then definitely we become better watchmen of the thoughts. We are better controller, observer of the thoughts. So during our normal activities, definitely we need to be watchful that, okay, whether we are using our mind as a tool properly, and whatever we are thinking, we have to be conscious of what we are thinking. It should not be uncontrolled. Okay, whatever it wants, it can think. We should be the decision maker. Right now, I have to do this and this work. Right now, I have to go out and get vegetables. let me focus on that. Let me try to think where the best vegetable is available and how to, get good quality vegetables, healthy vegetables which are good for me. You think about that. Think about how to execute that properly. Maybe good. I should be getting good cost. Good deal also. So all those things, are practical. We have to think about things which are useful, good. Now you're going out and going for vegetables, and the mind is cluttered with so many thoughts. My neighbor said this thing, and I have to, reply him, and he insulted me, he offended me, or this person is walking on the street. He did not say good hello to me. I am feeling depressed. I am feeling anxious. Why he did not look towards me and smile at me? Then you're gone. The vegetable buying process. You are just going out to get a vegetable, but your mind is distracted towards 100 other things. This person did not behave this way. That person did not behave that way, and so many things. So there we have to be conscious. Okay, I mean, what doesn't matter. I mean, how that person deals with me, or how that person behaves with me. I should be good. If that person is not even looking at me, even then I can say hello. I can say good morning, but not too much worried about what other people, how other people deal with us. If somebody, stealing eye and not looking at us, okay, let them go. What is the big deal? So that way, this is an example where daily activities also we have to be alert where the mind is going. If it is getting perturbed by nonsensical things, which doesn't matter at all. I hope that was clear. Any other question?
I have one question. Hello.
I hope Mr. Bhattacharya, Jayanta Bhattacharya is able to hear, because earlier he had some problems, so now he's trying to speak. I'm not sure.
Yes.
Any other question?
I just want to know that this
Okay,
kind
so
of
if you don't
mind
have any other
control.
question, let us end.
Hello.
Thank you. Let us connect tomorrow. Please enter the feedback. That is very, very important. I keep requesting every day. Your feedback is going to be very important, and that helps me in improving whatever content we are doing.
Hello.
It seems sir has left the meeting, so we can continue tomorrow. And I think so sir was unable to hear the last question. We'll take it tomorrow. So thank you everyone for joining. See you tomorrow at 6:30.